It has been stated by some journalists and historians that George W. Bush has brought about the most faith-based administration in American history. This program will attempt to determine whether or not that statement is true, and if it is, what effect has his faith had on America and on the world?
Could it be that a candidate for President of the United States would actually fly in the face of political correctness and espouse not just religious convictions, but a firm belief in Jesus Christ?
When I heard Bush speak so frankly from his heart about Christ, I knew he had just won the election.
One thing I've learned in my life is never to trust anyone who thinks that he exclusively has God on his side, especially when he's the President of the United States.
He is, by all accounts, a deeply religious man and one who believes in the power of prayer. In fact, I've heard several accounts of the President being found in the Oval Office on his knees in prayer.
In 1986, Bush Sr. enlisted his son's help in running his presidential campaign. As he spent time in Washington, George W. got an up-close view of the seamier side of politics. The conviction of his newfound faith was soon put to the test.
George Bush did more than just talk the talk. I remember staffers trying to get him to have intimate relations with a young lady on our staff. Of course, probably what was going on was political blackmail, leverage on the son of the future President of the United States. He'd look at me and raise his eyebrows like, "Do you believe that?" On one occasion, I remember a public figure whose name you'd immediately know came in and said, "She just wants you to relax, George. She's just trying to help you relax. You've hurt her feelings." He said, "Good." He yelled it so loud you could hear it through all the offices. He said, "Not interested. I'm a married man. I'm glad she got the message. Good." As far as I know, that was the last time she ever bothered him.
I remember when the President met Putin in June of 2001 in Slovenia. It was not long after he'd become president, and Bush said something rather flattering to Putin like, "I saw this guy, I looked into his soul, and he's a good man." Of course, at the time, Bush was ridiculed by the foreign policy establishment for naivety. But look what happened. The degree of trust that enabled American aircraft to fly over Russia when the US was attacking the Taliban in Afghanistan is absolutely astonishing. I mean, I don't think that would have happened with any other American president except Bush.
George W. Bush did wrestle with the invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq. I think, like Lincoln, he wanted to be on God's side of the issue. He knew he was sending young men and women to their deaths, and he knew he would be misunderstood.
I think that President Bush, with his vision and his leadership in a world troubled by terror, has the opportunity for greatness. His ability to stick with that, in spite of the fact that critics are attempting to force him off it, is what will determine whether or not the history books regard him as a great president. From everything I've seen so far, he is going to be that kind of president.
Things are changing in the Middle East, and changing for the better.
President Bush will be known as the man that stood up to Islamic fundamentalism being used to tyrannize their own people. So in another 100 years, in the Islamic world, he'll be viewed as a great liberator and the one who began the process to set them free from those who use Islam to enslave Islamic people politically.
As the President has so ably demonstrated, it is vitally important for Christians to be fully engaged in the religious and cultural conflicts of the 21st century. Will the faith of George Bush be sufficient to keep us in God's hands today? Perhaps, if we all join our faith to his.